Hello fellow makeup lovers, how are you guys doing? I'm pretty excited for this video because we're going to be talking about how to tell if an indie brand is selling private labeled makeup. If you're new to my channel, my name is Amy and I love talking about indie makeup. I love getting to support small brands, and I've learned a lot over the last few years from buying so many different indie brands products, and I like to be able to share that with you here on my channel. So if you want to learn more about indie makeup, this is definitely the place for you. Don't forget to subscribe. I've been doing a video series as an introduction to indie makeup just to help anyone who's not as familiar be a smart consumer, and just giving my tips and experiences and all that in these videos. So I do have one already that is called Red Flags for Indie Brands. I can link down below, just kind of telling you what to avoid, what to be careful about. There's also one called The Misconceptions of Indie Brands, which I think is a really good little piece as well. Not to toot my own horn, but if you are wondering like, what is an indie brand? Why do indie brands sell out so fast? Like all these different questions, that video definitely addresses it. But like I said, today we're going to be talking about private labeled indie makeup. So jumping right on in, I already pulled up the definition of private labeled on Google. There's a few different ones, but I would say this one is pretty on point. It says a retailer's name as used on a product sold by the retailer, but manufactured by another company. So private labeled makeup, I would say there's kind of two different things going on in the beauty community, if I could just condense it really simply. One is when a brand literally takes a palette that already exists, or I'm just going to say palettes just to make it easier. They take a palette that already exists. They don't choose the shades. They don't move the shades around. They do nothing to the product. It's just, it is what it already is. And then they slap their name on it. So that's one example of private label makeup, and that's probably, just throwing it out there, the one that I hate the most, just because there's literally no originality to it at all. It's just slap your name and sell it. And then there's another type where a brand, they are having private labeled makeup where their formulas, their colors are private labeled, but they're doing the packaging, they're changing up the color story, they're making it their own, even though the formula is not their own, if that makes sense. So as far as my opinion on private labeled makeup, I don't feel like it is definitively good or bad. It really just depends on how the brand is going about it, in my personal opinion. So something that I personally stay away from, like I said, is the copy and paste. I just don't love that. I feel like there's literally no originality, and that's just not what I'm wanting to support. But again, that's just my personal opinion. Another reason I wouldn't want to support a brand that's private labeling is if they are doing a private labeled product and the price is extremely high compared to what they're purchasing it for. And I've been able to see this in the past by finding the private labeled product on Alibaba or whatever and seeing it at a very, very low price. And I've seen a brand sell the same product for 8 times that original price, which is crazy to me. So I'm not about that. When I do my research and I see that, I don't want to support that brand. But on the other hand, like I said, I'm not completely against it, because some indie brands use it as a stepping stone to be able to make enough money to truly do their own formulas, their own products, because it can be really expensive to start a brand, obviously. So private label is the cheaper option to start off with, and then they want to build to something else. An example of this would be Midas Cosmetics, and I feel like they've done private labeling completely right, because from the start they've been very open and honest about it and transparent, which I appreciate, and they used it as a stepping stone to slowly make their own formulas. And even the private label products that they did have that were private labeled formula, they were making them their own, doing their own color stories, doing their own themes, doing amazing marketing, and making products for everyone. So I just really look at Midas Cosmetics as an example of a brand doing private label right, which is why I have no shame in being affiliated with them, because yes, maybe some of the formulas are not their own, but they are making unique products and there's originality and heart put into it, which when I buy indie makeup, I love seeing the passion behind it in the product. Just me, I'm a little weird about it, it's fine. So like I said, I appreciate transparency so much, and another reason why I wouldn't support an indie brand that is doing private labeling if they're doing it and lying about it. Unfortunately, another example I have is seeing a brand sell makeup from Alibaba, and then on their Instagram they literally had written in their caption, all handmade. And it's just a lie. And I personally don't want to support brands that lie and mislead their consumers, because you're not buying a handmade product. So lastly, I had one more opinion to throw in here about private label makeup, and this was actually brought to me by a friend of mine, Paulina Beauty. She recently did a video called My Problem with Indie Brands, and I thought it was really interesting. I clicked on it right away just because I love indie brands so much. I was curious to hear her opinion on it, and she mentioned how being someone in Europe, buying private label makeup from America would be kind of silly because you have to pay international shipping, you have to pay customs, and she's like, why wouldn't I just buy a private label brand that's in Europe? Which completely makes sense to me, so that's just a different perspective to throw in here. Now let's go ahead and talk about my tips. The first one that I have is, this is kind of simple, but do your own research. Don't just trust hearsay. I hear it all the time where someone will just throw out there like, oh yeah, that brand's private labeled, and it's like, well, how do you know? And they're like, well, I just heard that it is. I feel like it's important to not spread information unless you have genuinely researched it and you have something to support what you're saying. I don't like to throw it around. I rarely ever say openly like, this brand is 100% private label, because unless I genuinely have the facts, I just don't want to spread misinformation. And some brands, they might have one product that's private label and the rest isn't, and they're just filling in their line. I've seen a lot of brands do this with brushes, where like they'll make their own stuff, but then the brushes that they sell will be private labeled, but it doesn't mean that everything they sell is private labeled. So I just try to be careful with what I say. So my next tip, if you're suspecting if a brand is selling private label makeup, is to use reverse image search. Obviously, if it's someone like reposting customer images or it looks not like a product photo, then this isn't really going to make that much of a difference. If you're seeing them post photos that are more professionally done, I would definitely do a reverse image search and just see if anything comes up. You never know. I know this isn't makeup, but I've had this before. There was a purse that I wanted to buy. I got an Instagram ad for it. I was like, oh, that's so cute. It was like $60. It was a brand I never heard of, and I was really like debating on it just because I loved the design so much. But I did a reverse image search. I found it on AliExpress for like $10, even though the brand themselves was saying that it was like manufactured in Italy. They did all their own purses. So a reverse image search is definitely your friend. It takes just a minute. It's worth a try. One of the best tips that I have is you can go on the ingredients list for a product, copy and paste it into the Google search bar, and any other product out there that has the exact same ingredients list, the exact same order, is going to come up. So this is a great way to tell if something is private labeled, because it'll show the exact same formula for a bunch of different brands. And then another tip to go along with this is if a brand never posts their ingredients list, or they have impartial ingredients list, I would say that that's not a 100% for sure sign that they're private labeling, but it's definitely just a little bit of a red flag. Like maybe they're not wanting me to be able to Google this, or maybe they're not wanting me to be able to research this entire product. So I just want to throw that in as well. Another tip that I have that I'm going to go ahead and show examples for is if you see multiple brands doing the exact same product, I would say there's a high chance that it's private labeled. This one, the example I'm going to show you, I'm like 1,000% sure that it's private labeled, because I've seen so many brands do this exact same palette, exact same colors, exact same formulas. Like it's the exact same product, just different brands slapped their name on it. So I'm going to go ahead and throw pictures on screen for this. And I also just want to give credit to my friend Stephanie. She's BlessedX3 on Instagram. She sent me a bunch of these pictures a while back and was wanting me to do like a little opinion piece about it on my YouTube. And I wasn't sure what to say then, but it felt like it fit perfectly in this video. So I just want to show you an example of private labeled makeup and what some brands are doing. So this here, we'll start off with I'll move over this way. No, I don't like that side. I'll move over this way. First, we have Georgie's Cosmetics, and they're selling this palette. It's called their Neon Glow palette. It says it's originally $45. They were selling it for $38 in this photo, but the updated shop thing says that it's $32. But you can see the color story, see where all the colors are, and then we'll move on to Ruby May Cosmetics, which is selling this exact same palette. And I'm not sure how much they were selling it for, but you can see another brand doing the exact same thing. Next we have from Amazon. It's I think the brand says Atlanta. It just says it's a neon luminous glitter eyeshadow palette, but you can see exact same product. The glitters are all in the same place, the shades are all in the same place, and they're selling it for originally $18, on sale for $17. So I think that's like one of my tips about brands marking products up. You can see that if another brand can afford to sell it for $18, just imagine how much money the brand selling it for $40 is making, despite not doing anything but slapping their name on it. And then the next one I have here is another one from Amazon, but this is Delanchi, and they're calling it the Aurora Glow Palette, the Blacklight Eyeshadow Palette. Same exact product, again, $17. Next we have a little screenshot here from Lush & Co. Exact same palette. And then we have a brand called Villain Lashes. Exact same palette. You can't see it as much in this one because it has the black light on, but the colors, glitters, all the exact same. Then we have the brand called Smola Lashes. Exact same palette. And lastly, I just had to throw this in here. This is Dulzura Cosmetics. This one was the most disappointing to me because it's literally being sold for $42 on their site for a private labeled palette. I would be wary of these brands and the products they sell because I would assume, just an assumption, that possibly a lot more of what they sell is private labeled. And then for the brands like Dulzura Cosmetics and that other one that I mentioned that was more expensive, I'd be cautious about paying for their products as well because obviously the upcharge, is that what it's called? I didn't go to business school, okay? It's crazy. It's crazy. So that's one example there. I can also go ahead and show you this one, which here is from Peachy Queen. They have the Spicy Sriracha palette. And then I also saw a while back, this brand doesn't even exist anymore, but this is from New Culture Cosmetics. And they have the Sriracha Hot and Spicy palette. So the colors inside are a little bit different. You can see that they chose their own colors, which at least is a little something, but the packaging was the exact same. Okay, so the last example that I have here is I want to show you the screenshot of what these eyeshadows look like from Alibaba, and this was given to me, or I screenshotted it courtesy of my friend Bad to the Brow, which I can link her videos down below as well. But these are some multi-chrome shadows on Alibaba. You can see that if you buy the least amount, they're $2 each. So there's 17 shades available to choose from. And I just would say take note of this packaging because there's other brands out there that are selling these for much more. So this first one I'll show you is Carla Cosmetics, which I believe is a indie brand in Europe, and they were selling these for $16. They recently changed the packaging, so I don't know what's happening there, but they were selling the exact same shadows and saying that they were handmade, unfortunately. We also have this indie brand called Beauty Paint, which is selling these exact shadows, and I believe they were selling them for $10 each. I'm really genuinely not trying to bash these brands, but I just want you guys to be able to be smart, informed consumers, and I don't want you guys falling into the trap of spending a lot of money on a product that's not worth that much. So the last tip I wanted to throw in here is pretty simple, and it's not the easiest way to tell if a brand is private labeled or not, but it is a justification that I use sometimes if someone's like, oh, is this brand private labeled? And I'm like, no, because I saw them on their Instagram stories making the products. So this is more like how to tell if they're not rather than if they are. But if you follow indie brands on Instagram, I keep up with them a lot. And for example, I've seen Divina Cosmetics posting making their own products. I've seen Lethal Cosmetics manufacturing their products. I've seen, I want to say, Give Me Glow Cosmetics. I've seen Menage Cosmetics post little sneak peeks showing them putting their products together. So obviously the visual of seeing them create their products takes away any confusion or wondering if they're private labeled. I have one more tip. I personally don't feel like there's anything wrong with reaching out to a brand and just asking them point blank if they are private labeled. Unfortunately, I've seen some brands get really nasty about this where they're kind of rude or they'll block someone for asking, but at the same time, I feel like that's a clue in itself. If you can't just say, no, I'm not private labeled, or just be courteous about a consumer having a very valid question. So if I was looking into a brand, I wouldn't be afraid to just go ahead and DM or send an email through their contact form. Those were all the tips that I had to share with y'all. I hope that this video helped a little bit. And if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them down below. Please feel free to leave your opinion on private label makeup down below. I'd be really curious to hear. I know that some people are against it because it's a little bit harder to know the safety of the products if you can't trace where they originally came from, or if they're truly cruelty-free, if they're truly vegan, if a brand is buying from another brand, which I think is a very valid point as well. But that's pretty much everything for today's video. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.